Okay, we have been told on good authority that they're just looking for fraud. They're not going to mess with grandma's Social Security. You can trust Donnie and Elon. They are not going to touch that Social Security. Let's see what they said.
Social Security won't be touched. Other than
Won't
if
be
there's
touched.
fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
Just,
I
you
want
don't
you to-
have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not going to be touched.
Okay, so they're not going to touch Social Security. So I think it's something like 71% of the public doesn't even want Medicaid touched, much less Social Security. So say in theory, you want to gut Social Security to stuff more money in the pockets of your criminal rich buddies like Elon there. What do? Well, maybe you just break it so badly that it can't function. So how do you do that? Well, you got to fire a lot of workers so that the system won't function. How do you do that? Well, you really demonize those workers as if they are the problem with the country, not these parasitic billionaires who pay no taxes like Elon and Trump. No, it's the workers. So this was retweeted by Elon. Stalin, Mao, and Hitler didn't murder millions of people. Their public sector workers did. See, it's not them, it's the bureaucracy. If you got rid of the bureaucracy, they were just cranks. They were all right. It's the bureaucracy you have to address. That was so grotesque. Even the normally Elon rim jobbing ADL, it was too much for them. It is deeply disturbing and irresponsible for someone with a large public platform to elevate the kind of rhetoric that serves to undermine the seriousness of these issues. He might also not have heard that his fellow Nazis really don't like Stalin and Mao very much, so that was probably ill considered.
Yeah.
But all of that is meant to create an atmosphere where you can damage these social safety nets by removing their staff under the pretense that the staff is I don't know, responsible for genocide, while they genocide your grandma. Memo details Trump plan to sabotage the Social Security Administration. Is from Popular Information, who got a hold of their internal memo. An internal Social Security Administration memo sent on March 13th and obtained by Popular Information details proposed changes to the claims process that would debilitate the agency, cause significant processing delays, and prevent many Americans from applying for or receiving benefits. The memo, authored by acting Deputy SSA Commissioner Doris Diaz, purports to be motivated by a desire to mitigate fraud risks. This is a little image of the memo. Elon Musk has pushed several false claims about the nature and scope of Social Security fraud. In a recent interview on Fox Business, Musk suggested that 10% of federal expenditures were related to Social Security fraud. This is false. Social Security fraud does exist, but improper Social Security payments amounts to about 9 billion annually, less than 1% of total Social Security benefits paid, and 0.1% of the federal budget. Most improper payments are not criminal fraud, but the result of beneficiaries or the SSA failing to update records. The biggest change contemplated by Diaz's memo is to require internet identity proofing for benefit claims made over the phone. When an SSA customer is, quote, unable to utilize the internet ID proofing, customers will be required to visit a field office to provide in-person identity documentation. Okay, so your grandma who can't use a smartphone, They want grandma to have to confirm their identity on the internet, otherwise find the nearest office, which in rural areas can be 100 miles away. Currently, customers can make claims and verify their identity without using the internet or visiting an SSA office. Fraud is extremely rare because there are many safeguards in place. After initiating a call, customers must provide their social security number, date of birth, parents' names, mother's maiden name, and date of birth. After the initial tele-application is completed, the information provided is checked against tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, and medical information, depending on the nature of the claim. If there are any discrepancies, a customer may need to mail a copy of their birth certificate to the SSA. About 40% of all claims are currently processed over the phone. Because the SSA serves a large population that is either older or physically disabled, many cannot access the internet. Under the new system, this would force these populations to visit an office to have their claim processed. The Diaz memo estimates it would require 75 to 85,000 in-person visitors per week to SSA's offices to implement the policy. SSA offices do not currently have the resources to handle an influx of in-person appointments of this size. In 2023, the most recent data available, there were about 119,128 daily visits on average to SSA offices. 85,000 more week visits would be a 14% increase. SSA offices no longer accept walk-ins, and wait time for an appointment, even before these changes, averaged over a month. So without these changes, it would take you over a month to get an in-person visit to an SSA office. The memo anticipates creating a huge surge in demand for in-person appointments as the SSA slashes staff and closes offices. Acting SSA Commissioner Leland Dudek has announced that he will terminate 7,000 workers, about 12% of the workforce. Meanwhile, dozens of SSA offices are being shuttered. Some people need to travel more than 100 miles to get to the nearest location. As the SSA limits services that could be provided over the phone, it is ending in-person services at some offices, converting them to phone only. It almost sounds like they're turning the whole system into a maze that's going to be impossible to navigate so that they don't have to give people their benefits. An SSA source told Popular Information that there are, quote, no significant concerns about fraud at intake because no benefits are being distributed. And there are already multiple layers of identity verification in place before a claim is approved. The source said they believe the new ID verification steps are an effort to create additional hurdles to filing claims and overwhelm the system. You think? Axios did a little bit more about this just to fill in some more details. These changes, if implemented, would cripple field office operations, and they're already badly paralyzed, a former official told Axios, requesting anonymity because they were on a job search and might work in the future with the SSA. Benefits are adjusted regularly as people's incomes change, they explained. Forcing all those folks to come into a field office would, in essence, break the agency. That's the idea. Those representatives are well aware of these risks, the former official said. A second former official who recently worked in operations and spoke on condition of anonymity due to fear of retaliation said the money it would cost to implement these changes would dwarf any savings that would come from cracking down on identity fraud. People, yeah, it's not about saving money. People have a lot of trouble with the identification process, says Jen Burdick, a lawyer who provides free legal services for Americans trying to get Social Security disability benefits. A recent client tried to drop by an office last week and was told to make an appointment by phone. On the phone, they were put on hold for 6 hours on Monday, 5 hours on Tuesday, and 2 blocks of time, each 3 hours on Wednesday, she said. These proposed changes are a way they're trying to use red tape to literally block people from getting benefits, Burdick said. So why are they doing all this? There's a place they could probably go and save more money. That would be the Pentagon. Notice how they haven't gone to the Pentagon. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Pentagon fails seventh audit in a row, unable to fully account for $824 billion budget. Isn't that weird? You would think if this was really about saving money on behalf of the American people, they would have made a beeline for the Pentagon as soon as they got there. Haven't set foot in the Pentagon. So weird.
And what's weird is that they've talked about cutting the Pentagon. Trump has talked about it. Hegseth has talked about it, but the CR they passed actually increases funding by $6 billion.
Increased funding. Isn't that strange? Isn't that strange? This is what this is about, folks. They're not going to stop stuffing money into the pockets of the defense contractors that pay their election costs, their campaign costs. This is what this is about. This is Trump's tax proposals. These people, they're shaking your grandma by her ankles trying to get loose change out. 2017 tax law extensions will cost $466 billion. Exempting certain types of income, $222 billion. Corporate rate reductions, $41 billion. All of that, they're so concerned about runaway deficits, they're not going to cut that. Well, maybe you're saying, oh, but I'm going to get so much money out of this. Well, not unless you're rich. Not unless you're rich. 68% of that is going to go to the richest 20% of people. We did a segment about this. If you're in the bottom 1%, you're going to get about $20 out of that. If you're in the second 20th percentile, which I'll wager a lot of our audience is, I think it was something, I'm going by my memory, but I think it was around $168 a year you're going to get. These guys, they get like $80,000 a year.
Yeah, that I remember specifically. The highest income earners get on average 80 grand a year.
Yeah, they get 80 grand a year, which, remember, if you're in this bracket, you don't need it. You don't need it. These guys, that's lunch at Le Cirque for these guys. That's nothing. But it's going to be a tragic situation for a lot of elderly and disabled people for them to enact these kinds of changes at Social Security. Just the amount of people they're talking about firing and what it's going to do to an agency that's already understaffed. That's going to make elderly people and disabled people, it's going to make their lives worse and more difficult so that these guys can get an $80,000 that they don't even need. It's ideological for them. The peasants should not get anything. They should not get anything, and the wealthy should not be constrained in their privileges in any way. It is a typical aristocratic mindset. These people are aristocrats. They believe all of the spoils of society should go to them, and you should be happy with whatever crumbs fall off their table. And if you are not the kind of peasant who would tag Elon in a post about how long you drove your truck last week, they don't have a lot of use for you.
Yeah. And the reason the 80 grand number is as small as it is because the really rich people don't pay any taxes on a vast majority of their income because most of their income isn't technically income. It's money that they borrow against the value of their assets.
Exactly.
Right? So that's not taxed at all. That's borrowed money. They don't even think of that as income. That's why the number is as low as it is at 80 grand. But it still dwarfs the savings of the average working class or poor person.
Right. All of this, oh, that federal worker, he's taking money out of your pocket. Meanwhile, you got these guys with literally hundreds of billions of dollars paying no taxes. If you're going, oh, these goddamn federal workers, I'm sorry, man. I don't know how you remember to breathe if you don't get what they're doing to you. They are just doing everything possible to get you angry at people of your own class in order to avoid having that wrath turned on themselves. And even in small ways that you might turn that on them, like a Tesla boycott, they want to make it illegal. Levitt, Washington's favorite sugar baby, she just went on Fox and explicitly said, connected boycotting Tesla. If you go to a dealership, we're going to find you.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Because you go to a dealership to protest, right? That's legal, isn't it? And that's what we said as soon as they started talking this language. They're going to claim that it's about throwing Molotov cocktails, which is already illegal. And they're going to start using that as a pretext they're going to test it. Look what they just did with defying the court order with sending the people to El Salvador. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to arrest people for protesting, call them terrorists, and see what they can get away with.
They'll arrest you for not buying the car. That's what I just thought of. That would be a great sketch for our arts festival. A guy goes in to buy a Tesla, and the salesman clearly is like a deep state guy who clearly is like bullying him. Now, remember, you're on camera. So the guy in the back room says 65,000 is really our best we can do. So you're going to take that, you're going to leave it, and be aware you're being filmed right now. You're being filmed right now. So if you get up and walk away, that could be considered, a violent act of illegal resistance against the government.
And that's why I say we're going to have to write the show, because no one's going to send that to us.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. None of these playwrights are all too shit.
The guy in the back room says he can throw in a heated seats. Think about it. You want heated seats? They don't. You know where they don't have heated seats? Prison.
Or cold stone floor at Guantanamo.
Yeah, they don't have heated seats at Guantanamo Bay. So we will throw in the heated seats for you. Be smart. Think about what you're saying here.
No, hey. Well, this is where they've made a terrible tactical error. Ted Cruz can tweet out how he's going to buy a Tesla and how he supports Teslas, and all the conservatives can line up behind Trump and talk about how much they support Tesla. Most of your customer base for a Tesla who can afford it and who want an electric car are libs. Most of the MAGA people, they don't want an electric car, and they can't afford a Tesla.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how much you try to change the branding. That's just not your customer base. They might tweet. Doesn't cost them anything to tweet. They're not going to buy, which is why if you are in a position to buy, and most of our audience is not, but if you are, boycott Tesla, because this is how Elon funds everything else. The way he's able to buy your government is against Tesla stock. As Keith just pointed out, his wealth is basically borrowing against the value of the stock.
Right.
If you kill the value of that stock, he can't leverage that stock in that way anymore. And I just took a look while you were talking. It's down another 5%
Oh, it's down.
today.
Yeah, it's going down. I keep checking.
Well, because obviously it has its whole rationale for existence has been lit on fire. You're going to have a worldwide boycott or de facto boycott, even people who are not doing it as a political gesture. Who wants the heat of driving one? Even if we covered that article, even if you politically like Elon, you want to take shit when you're driving around in this Tesla. People who needs the heat. You just want to drive. You just want to drive a car. You want to go to work. Like, who wants to make that kind of political statement when they just want to drive to work?
Yeah, what if we tank the stock of Tesla, and then when Pete Buttigieg wins the next election, he'll seize the assets, he'll sell it to Bill Gates, and it'll become like a New World Order Davos type company. That's another good sketch. Have Dr. Fauci doing ads for Tesla on TV.
There you go.
Put yourself in a brand new Tesla today.
Please clap.